The scent of pine needles and frost clung to my skin as I knelt on the hard forest floor. Autumn's last breath whispered through the ancient trees, stirring my pale blonde hair across my face like a veil. I kept my eyes down, counting my shallow breaths, trying to disappear into the darkness between heartbeats. Around me, the pack circled, 12 pairs of feet crunching dead leaves, their shadows stretching like elongated predators in the dying light. "The Omega brings nothing but weakness," a female voice hissed, close enough that I felt her breath warm against my neck. Tessa. Always Tessa. Her hatred of me was as constant as the moon phases that ruled our lives. I clutched the small wooden pendant hanging from my neck, my mother's last gift before she died. The rough carving of a wolf with stars for eyes had been her talisman, and now it was mine. "Be still like water, fierce like fire," she used to whisper. But tonight, I could only manage the stillness. The Howling ceremony was meant to unite the pack, to remind us of our shared blood and purpose before winter's hardship. Instead, it had become my monthly humiliation. As the only Omega in the Silver Creek pack for 3 generations, I was an anomaly, a throwback to gentler times when healers and peacemakers were valued alongside warriors. "Bow lower, Grace," commanded Victor, the pack's beta, his voice carrying the weight of authority that made my forehead instinctively touch the ground. "Show proper respect to your betters." I obeyed, the taste of dirt and shame filling my mouth. Omegas were rare now. Most packs had bred us out, considering our empathic abilities and physical weakness evolutionary disadvantages in territories increasingly threatened by human encroachment and rival werewolf clans. In the New World Order, only strength mattered. "Perhaps she should howl for us," suggested another voice. Derek, Victor's loyal shadow, like a real wolf instead of the half-thing she is. Laughter rippled through the group, sharp as fangs. I closed my eyes, remembering my father's words before he too disappeared from my life. "They mock what they don't understand, Gracie. Your power isn't in your claws or teeth." The wind shifted suddenly, bringing with it a new scent that made the hair on my arms rise. Something ancient, something dangerous. The pack fell silent so abruptly that the absence of sound became a presence itself. Enough. The word wasn't shouted, barely raised above a murmur, yet it sliced through the clearing like lightning splitting an oak. I kept my head down, but every sense in my body, human and wolf alike, recognized the voice of power, the Alpha. Not just any Alpha, but the Alpha. The king of the Northern Territories, ruler of 7 packs, including our own. Alexander Blackthorn. I had never seen him in person, few had. He ruled from the ancestral stronghold deep in the mountains, appearing only for councils of war or to put down challenges to his authority. Stories about him were told in whispers, how he had killed his first challenger at 16, how he had united warring packs through strategy and merciless efficiency, how no one had seen him smile in the decades since he took power. Why was he here? At our small pack's monthly ceremony? "Your Alpha is absent," he continued, footsteps approaching slowly, deliberately. "Your beta allows this entertainment." Victor stammered something about tradition and discipline. I could smell his fear, sour and sharp. "Look at me, Omega." My breath caught. He was addressing me directly. I raised my eyes slowly, still on my knees. The Alpha King stood before me, taller than I had imagined, his presence filling the clearing like storm clouds before thunder. Black hair swept back from a face carved from granite, high cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, and eyes the color of Arctic ice. He wore simple clothes, dark pants, and a gray Henley that did nothing to hide the power coiled in his body. No ornaments, no visible symbols of his status. He didn't need them. But it was his expression that froze me in place. He was looking at me with such intensity, such focus, that the rest of the world seemed to blur around the edges. Not with disgust or the usual dismissal I received, but with recognition. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Grace," I whispered, my voice small even to my own ears. "Grace Sullivan." Something flickered in his eyes, a spark of what might have been surprise, quickly controlled. "Stand up, Grace Sullivan." I hesitated, glancing at Victor, whose face had gone pale. "I said stand," Alexander repeated, And this time there was no mistaking the command. The alpha voice. The one no wolf could disobey. My legs trembled as I rose, acutely aware of the dirt on my jeans, the threadbare quality of my sweater, the tangled state of my hair. I was nothing. The pack runt. The one given the smallest portion, the coldest corner of the communal house. Yet here I stood, meeting the gaze of the most powerful werewolf in 1,000 miles. "Your eyes," he said, almost to himself. "They're different," I finished automatically, then bit my lip at my boldness. Most werewolves had eyes that reflected their wolf. Amber, brown, occasionally a light green. Mine were an impossible blue-violet, a color not found in nature. Another mark of my otherness. Alexander didn't respond to my interruption. Instead, he turned to address the pack, who had drawn closer together like sheep sensing a predator. "I arrived unannounced to find your pack leader gone, your beta using an omega for sport, and half of you drunk on wolfsbane liquor during a sacred ceremony." His voice remained even, which somehow made it more terrifying. "This stops now. Where is Ryan?" "Ryan Morris, our pack alpha. My distant cousin and the only reason I hadn't been driven out years ago." "Hunting," Victor offered quickly. "A rogue wolf was spotted on the eastern border. He led a patrol without informing me of territory threats." Alexander's eyebrow lifted slightly. Interesting choice. Something wasn't right. I could feel it in the charged air, in the way the pack was shifting nervously. Ryan wouldn't have left without telling me. Despite our complicated history, he had always been my protector, ever since we were children. "Your Majesty," Tessa stepped forward, her perfect features arranged in a deferential smile. "We're honored by your presence. Had we known you were coming, we would have prepared a proper welcome." Alexander's gaze flicked to her, then away, dismissive as brushing off a fly. "Grace Sullivan will accompany me back to the pack house. The rest of you, continue your ceremony." Shock rippled through the group. Victor stepped forward. "Sir, she's just an omega. If you need assistance, I would be honored." "Did I ask for your opinion, Beta?" Alexander's voice dropped to a dangerous register. "Or your assistance?" Victor recoiled as if slapped. I stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. The Alpha King, taking personal notice of me. It made no sense. Alexander turned and began walking toward the trail that led back to our settlement. He didn't look back, simply expecting me to follow, as if there was any choice. I hurried after him, feeling the burning stares of the pack on my back. The moment we were out of earshot, he spoke without turning. "You're afraid." It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. "Yes." "Not of me." I hesitated. "Not only of you." That earned me a glance over his shoulder. Honest. Interesting. We walked in silence for several minutes, the forest growing darker around us. I stumbled once on an exposed root, and his hand shot out to steady me. Warm, strong, gone before I could process the contact. "Your cousin is missing," he said abruptly. My heart stuttered. "Ryan?" But Victor said... Victor lied. Ryan hasn't been seen for 3 days. His second should have reported it immediately. Cold dread pooled in my stomach. "How do you know this?" "Because I make it my business to know everything that happens in my territory." Alexander stopped, turning to face me fully. "And because Ryan sent me a message before he disappeared. A message about you." The forest seemed to hold its breath. In the distance, a wolf howled. Long, lonely, searching. "Me?" I whispered. Alexander's eyes gleamed in the gathering darkness, unreadable as winter stars. "He believed your life was in danger, and now so do I." The ground beneath me felt suddenly unsteady. Ryan, missing, the pack's strange behavior, and now the Alpha King himself, appearing out of nowhere, speaking to me as if I mattered. Why would anyone want to hurt me? My voice sounded small against the vastness of the forest. "I'm nothing. No one." Alexander stepped closer, and for the first time I caught his scent, pine and smoke and something untamed that made my wolf stir within me. "That," he said softly, dangerously, "is the first lie you've told me, Grace Sullivan." His eyes locked with mine, and I think we both know it. The wind picked up, carrying with it a promise of snow and secrets buried too long. Whatever came next would change everything. I clutched my mother's pendant, feeling its familiar edges press into my palm. Be still like water, fierce like fire. I would need to be both to survive what was coming. The pack house appeared through the trees, lights glowing warm against the darkening sky. It was a sprawling structure of wood and stone that had grown organically over decades, additions built as our numbers expanded. Once, it had been the pride of Silver Creek Pack. Now, like so much else, it was falling into disrepair. Rotting boards patched haphazardly, windows cracked and taped rather than replaced. Alexander paused at the edge of the clearing, his gaze sweeping the building with clinical assessment. "When was the last time you saw Ryan?" he asked, his voice low enough that anyone watching from the windows wouldn't hear. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to think clearly, despite the fog of fear clouding my mind. 4 days ago. He came to my cabin early in the morning. My cabin, a generous term for the small gardening shed I'd converted into living space after Tessa had made sharing the pack house unbearable. Located at the far edge of pack territory, it gave me the solitude I craved, but marked me further as an outsider. "He seemed worried," I continued, the memory sharpening. "Said he'd found something in the old archives that changed everything. He wouldn't tell me what, just that he needed to confirm it before taking action." Alexander's eyes narrowed. "And he didn't mention where he was going?" "No." I hesitated, debating whether to share the rest. The Alpha's steady gaze made the decision for me. But he left something with me, for safekeeping. Interest flickered across his face. "Show me." "Later," he added, glancing toward the pack house where shadows moved behind curtains. "We have an audience." He placed a hand lightly on the small of my back, guiding me forward. The casual touch sent a jolt through my system, my wolf responding with a confused mixture of submission and something else, something I refused to examine too closely. The moment we stepped onto the porch, the front door swung open. Tessa stood in the entrance, her transformation from forest bully to gracious hostess complete. She had changed into a fitted dress, her dark hair now falling in artful waves around her shoulders. "Your Majesty," she purred, dropping into a perfect curtsy. "We've prepared rooms for you, and..." Her gaze flicked dismissively to me. "Separate accommodations for the Omega." "Grace stays with me," Alexander stated, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. "Have her things brought to my quarters." Tessa's smile faltered. "All of her things are in a cabin at the property edge. It's rustic." "Then send someone to collect them. Now." Behind Tessa, I could see Victor hovering in the hallway, his face a mask of barely concealed anger. 3 other pack members stood nearby, all betas, all loyal to Victor. The house felt wrong, tense in a way that made my skin prickle with warning. "Of course." Tessa recovered smoothly. "Right away." Alexander guided me past her into the house, his presence a solid wall between me and the others. The familiar sense of the pack house hit me. Pine cleaner, cooking spices, the underlying musk of wolf. But something was missing. Ryan's distinctive cedar and leather scent that usually permeated every corner. We followed Victor to the east wing, where the formal guest quarters were located, rooms rarely used except during pack gatherings. The Alpha Suite took up the entire end of the hallway, a spacious bedroom with attached sitting area and private bath. Windows looked out over the forest and the mountains beyond, a view that had once made my heart soar when I was allowed in these spaces as a child. "Leave us," Alexander commanded once we reached the door. "And inform the pack I'll address everyone at dinner." Victor gave a stiff nod and retreated. The moment the door closed behind us, Alexander's posture changed, the regal bearing giving way to something more predatory. He moved through the room with silent efficiency, checking windows, closets, even under the bed. "What are you doing?" I asked, hovering uncertainly near the door, making sure we're truly alone. He straightened, apparently satisfied. "This room is secure. Now, tell me what Ryan gave you." I reached into my pocket, withdrawing the small object I'd carried close to my body since Ryan's visit. A USB drive, unremarkable except for the symbol etched into its surface, a crescent moon intersected by 3 stars. Alexander's eyes widened fractionally. The triad emblem, You recognize it? I placed the drive in his outstretched hand, our fingers brushing momentarily. It's ancient. From before the Great Division, when wolves, witches, and seers formed an alliance. He turned the drive over, studying it. Your cousin was researching old myths? I sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. I don't know. He just said if anything happened to him, I should give it to someone I trust. I looked up, meeting his eyes. But I don't trust anyone, so why am I giving it to you? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Perhaps your instincts are better than your judgment. My instincts have kept me alive in a pack that would rather see me dead, I countered, surprising myself with my boldness. So I think they're quite good. The Alpha King studied me with renewed interest. How long have you been living like this, isolated, ostracized? I looked away, the weight of years pressing down on me. Since my parents died, I was 12. Ryan took me in, but he couldn't. He couldn't protect me from everything. When he became Alpha 5 years ago, things got better for a while, then worse. When did they force you out of the pack house? They didn't force me, I said automatically, then sighed at his skeptical expression. 2 years ago, after I stopped Tessa's brother from hurting one of the pack children. He claimed I attacked him without provocation. Nobody believed me except Ryan. Alexander was very still. What exactly happened? The memory surfaced like a bruise being pressed. Jason, Tessa's brother, was disciplining young Emma for breaking a pack rule. But he went too far. I felt her pain, her terror. I touched my chest where the phantom agony had bloomed. Omegas feel emotions differently, more intensely. I couldn't just watch. So you intervened. I pulled her away. Jason didn't like that. He shifted partially and slashed me. I pushed up my sleeve, revealing the 3 jagged scars that ran from wrist to elbow. Said an Omega needed to be reminded of her place. Something dangerous flashed across Alexander's face. And Ryan's response? He banished Jason from the territory. It caused a rift in the pack. Half thought the punishment was too severe for disciplining an Omega. That's when the whispers started that Ryan was weak, that he let family loyalty cloud his judgment. Alexander set the USB drive on a nearby table and moved to stand before me. Stand up, Grace. I obeyed, unnerved by his closeness, by the intensity of his gaze as it traveled from my face to my scarred arm and back. Your cousin wasn't weak, he said quietly. He should have killed Jason for touching you. The vehemence in his voice startled me. Why would you say that? If you say just an Omega again, we're going to have a problem. His eyes held mine, unblinking. Ryan knew what you are, what you're worth. And so do I. Before I could ask what he meant, a knock at the door interrupted us. Alexander moved with preternatural speed, positioning himself between me and the entrance. Enter, he called, his posture relaxed but alert. A young pack member I recognized as Ellie, one of the few who had shown me kindness, appeared with my worn duffel bag. Your things, Grace, she said softly, placing the bag just inside the door. Her eyes darted nervously between us. Thank you, Ellie, I said, trying to reassure her with a smile. She nodded, then added in a rushed whisper, Be careful. The house feels wrong. Before either of us could respond, she slipped away. Alexander closed the door, his expression thoughtful. You have at least one ally. Ellie's mother was an Omega from another pack. She understands. I moved to my bag, checking that my few precious possessions were intact. My mother's old journals, a photo album, a change of clothes, my meager toiletries. We need to access whatever is on that drive, Alexander said, returning to business. But not here. Not now. You think someone might try to take it? I think someone already killed for it. His blunt assessment made my blood run cold. Your cousin wasn't hunting rogues. He was hunting answers, and someone silenced him. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Ryan wasn't missing. He was gone. Possibly dead. My last living family, my protector. I sank to my knees, a keening sound rising unbidden from my throat. Alexander was beside me instantly, one hand gripping my shoulder. Control it, he ordered, his voice firm but not unkind. We can't afford your grief right now. I struggled to contain the howl building in my chest. Years of conditioning making me bow my head in submission. I'm sorry, Don't apologize for feeling, he said, surprising me. Just channel it. Later, you can mourn. Right now, we need to survive dinner. Dinner? I repeated, the mundane word jarring against my shattered world. Yes. Where I'll address the pack while you observe who seems nervous, who seems angry, who can't meet your eyes. He pulled me to my feet with gentle insistence. You're not just an empath, are you? You can sense deception. The question, spoken as a certainty, sent a shock of fear through me. It was my most closely guarded secret, the ability that would get me killed if the wrong people knew. How did you? I make it my business to understand rare gifts. His hand remained on my arm, warm and steady. Your mother had it too, didn't she? Yes, I whispered. She called it truth-touching, but it's not reliable, not like a true seer's abilities. It's valuable nonetheless. He released me, stepping back. Clean up. Change if you want. Dinner is in 20 minutes and we're making an entrance. I stared at him, bewildered by the rapid shift. Why are you doing this? Why involve yourself in our pack's problems? In my problems? Alexander paused, his expression unreadable. Let's say I have a vested interest in keeping you alive, Grace Sullivan. That's not an answer. No, he agreed, that ghost of a smile returning. It's not. He turned away, effectively ending the conversation, and moved to the window where the first stars were becoming visible in the darkening sky. I watched him for a moment, this enigmatic alpha who had upended my world in the space of an hour, before retreating to the bathroom to prepare for whatever game we were playing. In the mirror, a stranger stared back at me, pale blonde hair tangled from the forest ritual, violet blue eyes wide with shock and fear, cheekbones too pronounced from years of taking the smallest portions. I looked fragile, breakable. But I wasn't broken yet. I touched my mother's pendant, drawing strength from its familiar contours. Be still like water, fierce like fire. Tonight, I would need to be both. The packhouse dining hall hummed with tension as Alexander and I entered. Conversations died mid-sentence, heads turned, and a wave of confusion rippled through the assembled wolves when they saw me at his side. I wore the best clothes I owned, jeans without holes, a soft blue sweater that matched my eyes, my mother's pendant visible at my throat. Nothing special, nothing that marked me as worthy of walking beside the Alpha King, yet here I was. Alexander's hand rested lightly on the small of my back, guiding me toward the head of the long wooden table. Ryan's chair, empty now, stood at one end. Alexander bypassed it, instead pulling out the chair to its right for me before taking the Alpha's seat himself. A clear statement of hierarchy that made Victor's face darken from across the table. Your Majesty, he began, gesturing to where Tessa stood hovering uncertainly. Perhaps you'd prefer to have someone more appropriate seated at your right hand for this important discussion. Alexander's gaze remained level, unimpressed. Are you presuming to tell me where to seat my companion? Beta Victor. The room fell deadly silent. Companion. The word held weight, implications. My cheeks burned as I felt every eye in the room reassessing me, recalculating my value in this new context. Of course not. Victor backpedaled, forcing a smile. I merely thought, don't. Alexander's voice was soft, but carried to every corner of the room. Now, shall we begin? I believe your pack has prepared quite a feast. At his signal, younger pack members began bringing in platters of food, roasted venison, wild rice, root vegetables harvested from the pack gardens. My stomach clenched with hunger at the rich aromas. Usually I ate alone in my cabin, making do with whatever I could grow or gather. This bounty seemed almost obscene by comparison. Alexander filled my plate before his own, another gesture that sent murmurs through the gathered wolves. I kept my eyes down, focusing on the food while stretching my senses outward, feeling the emotional currents in the room as Alexander had instructed. Confusion from most, resentment from Tessa and her circle. But from Victor and 3 others at the far end of the table, something darker, something that tasted like fear. I'll address the obvious question, Alexander said once everyone was served. I'm here because your Alpha requested my presence. Surprise rippled through the room. Victor set down his fork with deliberate care. Ryan contacted you directly, without informing his second? Is that unusual? Alexander asked, his tone deceptively casual as he cut into his venison. For an alpha to communicate with his king? No, but he expressed concerns about pack security, internal threats. Alexander's eyes swept the table, concerns that seem well-founded given his unexplained absence. As I told you, Victor said smoothly. He's leading a hunting party. We've had rogue wolf sightings. Yes, so you claimed. Alexander took a sip of wine. Yet, when I had my guards check the northern perimeter before dinner, they found no trace of Ryan or any hunting party. Curious. The tension in the room thickened. I kept my face carefully blank, but beneath the table, my hands trembled. Alexander placed his hand over mine, a brief squeeze offering silent reassurance. Perhaps they went further than planned, Victor suggested, though his confidence was slipping. I could smell the anxiety coming off him in waves. The territory is vast, indeed it is, which is why I've dispatched search parties of my own. Alexander's announcement caused several people to shift uncomfortably in their seats. They should report back by morning. Tessa leaned forward, her dress cut low enough to draw attention. Your Majesty, we're honored by your concern, but surely this is an internal pack matter. If Ryan has indeed encountered trouble, then it becomes my matter. Alexander cut her off. The security of all packs in the Northern Territories falls under my protection. Or have you forgotten your oaths? No one spoke. The only sounds were the clink of silverware and the crackling of the fire in the great hearth. I focused on my food, taking small, careful bites while extending my senses. Something was building in the room, a pressure, a wrongness that made my skin prickle. I glanced toward the windows, where darkness had completely fallen. The moon would rise soon, not quite full, but bright enough to strengthen our wolf aspects, heighten emotions already running dangerously high. Grace, Alexander said suddenly, drawing everyone's attention back to me. You've been quiet. What are your thoughts on your cousin's absence? All eyes turned to me. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of their stares. Ryan would never leave without telling me, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. And he wouldn't miss the Howling ceremony. It was important to him, to both of us. The ceremony we found you participating in so uniquely, Alexander added, his eyes holding mine. Tell me, is it pack tradition to force Omegas to their knees? Uncomfortable silence fell. Several pack members looked away, shame evident in their postures. It's discipline, Victor stated flatly. The Omega disrupts pack harmony with her presence. Her scent affects the younger males. Her empathic abilities cause discomfort. Containment is necessary. My cheeks burned with humiliation, but Alexander's expression never changed. Interesting perspective, he said. Especially since Omegas were once considered treasures among our kind. Healers, peacekeepers, truth-seers. He emphasized the last words, making me tense. Old ways, Victor dismissed. We've evolved beyond the need for such softness. Have we? Alexander's eyebrow arched. Strange. In my experience, packs with Omegas thrive. Those without them eventually turn on each other. He looked directly at Victor. Like animals. The insult, comparing werewolves to mindless beasts, landed like a slap. Victor's eyes flashed amber, his control slipping. With respect, Your Majesty, he growled. Our pack functioned perfectly until what? Alexander challenged. Until an Omega dared to stand up for a child? Until your Alpha remembered the old laws that protected them? The tension broke as Victor slammed his fist on the table. Until Ryan became obsessed with ancient history, wasting resources on archives and artifacts, while territorial threats grew at our borders. The pack needs strength, not scholars poring over dusty legends. The outburst revealed more than Victor likely intended. Alexander smiled, a predator seeing an opening. What ancient history in particular troubled you, Beta? The laws protecting Omegas, or something else entirely? Before Victor could answer, the doors to the dining hall burst open. A young male wolf, Carter, one of the patrol guards, staggered in, his clothes torn and bloody. Attack, he gasped. Northern border. They came out of nowhere. Alexander was on his feet instantly, his relaxed demeanor vanishing. "How many?" he demanded. "At least 20, Carter panted. "Not rogues. Organized. They took down Jake and Liam before we could even shift." The dining hall erupted into chaos. Wolves jumped to their feet, some already beginning the partial shift that extended claws and fangs. Victor shouted orders, directing fighters to grab weapons from the armory. Through the confusion, Alexander's hand closed around my wrist, pulling me close. "This is no coincidence," he murmured, his lips near my ear. "Stay by my side. No matter what happens, do not leave my sight." "But I'll only slow you down," I protested. "I can hide in my cabin until—" "They're not here for the pack, Grace." His ice blue eyes locked with mine. "They're here for you." The certainty in his voice chilled me to the bone. "Me? But I'm nobody." "You're everything," he said fiercely. "And someone knows it." Before I could question him further, the lights in the pack house flickered and died. Darkness engulfed us, broken only by the fire's glow and the emerging moonlight streaming through the windows. Growls and shouts filled the room as pack members bumped into each other, confusion turning to panic. "Stay close," Alexander ordered, pulling me against him as he backed toward the wall, positioning himself between me and the rest of the room. The windows imploded inward, showering the room with glass as dark figures launched themselves into the dining hall. The attack was coordinated, precise, nothing like the chaotic assaults of rogue wolves. These were trained fighters, moving with military efficiency. And they all wore the same emblem on their black tactical gear, a silver trident. "The Sea Wolves," Alexander breathed, recognition in his voice. "Atlantic territory. What are they doing this far inland?" I had no answer. Frozen in place as violence erupted around us, the Silver Creek Wolves fought back desperately. But they were outmatched, outmaneuvered by these organized invaders. Blood splattered across walls as claws tore flesh, the sickening sound of bones breaking punctuating growls and screams. Through the chaos, I spotted Victor. Not fighting, but backing toward a side exit, Tessa at his heels. Their faces showed not surprise, but grim determination. They had expected this. "Alexander," I gasped, pointing. "Victor, he's betraying his pack," Alexander finished, his eyes tracking the fleeing beta, but not escaping me. He shifted partially, face remaining human, but his body taking on the enhanced strength and speed of his wolf. With one powerful motion, he lifted me and set me on a high shelf built into the stone wall, partially hidden by decorative beams. "Do not move," he commanded. "I'll come back for you." Then he was gone, cutting through the battle with terrifying efficiency as he pursued Victor. I pressed myself against the wall, trying to become invisible as fighting raged below. My wolf whined inside me, desperate to flee, to hide, to survive, but I remained frozen, watching in horror as pack members I'd known all my life fought and fell. My eyes tracked Alexander as he disappeared through the same door Victor had used. Seconds stretched into minutes. The invaders were gaining ground, the packhouse defenders falling back, some already dead on the dining room floor. A figure separated from the others, eyes scanning the room methodically. Unlike the others, this one wasn't participating in the fighting. He was searching. His gaze swept upward, and I shrank back. Too late. Our eyes met, and a smile of cold triumph spread across his face. "Target located." He spoke into a communication device at his wrist. "East wall, high position." He started toward me, pulling a strange-looking gun from a holster at his hip. Not bullets, I realized with rising terror. Tranquilizer darts. They wanted me alive. I looked desperately for escape, but was trapped. The drop too high, the battle below too dangerous. The hunter raised his weapon, taking careful aim. A blur of motion intercepted him. Ellie, sweet Ellie, who had brought my bag, who had warned me, she slammed into the man, knocking his aim off, the dart meant for me embedded in the wooden beam inches from my head. "Run, Grace!" she screamed, clinging to the man as he cursed and tried to throw her off. I hesitated only a second, then moved. Not down into the battle, but up, scrambling onto the exposed rafters above the dining hall, using the rough stone wall as handholds. My human form wasn't strong, but I was light, quick. I pulled myself into the shadowy network of wooden beams that supported the pack house roof, crawling forward on hands and knees. Below, the hunter had disentangled himself from Ellie. I heard her cry out in pain, then silence. Grief and rage surged through me, but I forced myself to keep moving. Her sacrifice couldn't be in vain. I reached a small storage attic accessible through a hatch in the ceiling. Dust and forgotten pack memorabilia filled the space. Old furniture, trunks of clothes, holiday decorations. I crouched behind a large cabinet, trying to quiet my breathing, to slow my racing heart. The pendant at my throat seemed to pulse with warmth. I clutched it, silently begging my mother for guidance. What do they want from me? Why is this happening? The hatch creaked. Someone was coming. I pressed deeper into the shadows. A cornered animal with nowhere left to run. Moonlight streamed through a small round window, illuminating motes of dust in the air and gleaming off the silver barrel of the tranquilizer gun that appeared through the opening. The hunter pulled himself up, scanning the attic methodically. I held my breath, knowing discovery was inevitable in this enclosed space. His eyes hadn't adjusted to the darkness yet. I had seconds. Nothing more. My gaze fell on a trunk beside me, its lid slightly ajar. Inside, something reflected the moonlight. Metal. A knife. An old ceremonial dagger used in pack rituals, its blade inscribed with the same symbols as my pendant. I grabbed it just as the hunter spotted me. "Don't move," he ordered, raising his weapon. "You're coming with us, Omega. Our client has waited a long time for someone like you." "Who?" I demanded, my voice trembling along with the hand that clutched the dagger behind my back. "Who sent you?" He smiled, a cold expression that never reached his eyes. "The future. Now be a good little wolf and—" A massive force crashed through the hatch, sending splinters flying. The hunter spun, but too late. Alexander was on him, fully shifted now into his enormous black wolf form. Teeth flashed in the moonlight, and the hunter screamed once before those powerful jaws closed around his throat. The metallic scent of blood filled the small space. I pressed myself against the wall, the dagger still clutched in my hand as Alexander shifted back to his human form, his body covered in blood, both his and others. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, crossing the attic in 2 strides to reach me. I shook my head, unable to form words. He took my face in his hands, examining me as if needing to confirm for himself. "I told you to stay put," he growled, but relief softened his anger. "They found me anyway," I whispered. "They came specifically for me." "Why? What am I to them?" Alexander's eyes held mine in the moonlight. For the first time, I saw uncertainty in their depths. "The same thing you are to me," he said finally. "The key to everything." The night air bit at my skin as Alexander and I fled through the forest. Behind us, the pack house burned, orange flames licking at the sky, consuming generations of Silver Creek history. I tried not to think about who might still be inside, about Ellie's sacrifice, about the bodies I'd seen scattered across the dining room floor. Alexander moved with preternatural speed and grace, his hand firmly clasped around mine as he led us deeper into the wilderness. We'd escaped through a hidden passage behind the wine cellar, emerging from a root cellar nearly a quarter mile from the main house. He hadn't given me time to process what I'd seen. The betrayal, the attack, the deaths, only to run. "Where are we going?" I gasped as we scaled a steep embankment, my human lungs burning with exertion. "Safe house," he answered tersely. 5 miles north. Can you keep going?" I nodded, though my legs trembled with fatigue. We'd been running for nearly an hour, taking a circuitous route to throw off any pursuers. My wolf whined within me, desperate to shift and use her stronger form, but I suppressed the urge. In wolf form, my omega status would be even more pronounced, smaller, weaker, vulnerable. Alexander paused at the crest of a ridge, scenting the air. Moonlight silvered his profile, turning him into something ancient and mythic. Blood still stained his shirt. He'd grabbed a spare from a pack member's room before we fled, and his expression was grim. "Victor?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Got away." His jaw tightened. Had a vehicle waiting. Him and 5 others, including Tessa. The betrayal stung, though it shouldn't have surprised me. They were working with the sea wolves. They knew the attack was coming. "Yes." Alexander's eyes gleamed dangerously in the darkness. They'll be dealt with. The cold certainty in his voice sent a shiver through me. I'd heard stories of how the Alpha King punished traitors, traditional methods that harkened back to more brutal times. Even Victor didn't deserve that. What about the others? I asked, thinking of the pack members who had shown me kindness over the years. Did any? Some escaped. My guards are gathering survivors at the southern border. He squeezed my hand, a surprising gesture of comfort. But we can't join them. You're still the target. We continued north, moving more cautiously now. Alexander believed we'd lost our immediate pursuers, but trust didn't come easily to the Alpha King. Every few minutes he would pause, scenting the air, listening to the forest's night sounds with predator intensity. Tell me what this is about, I said during one such pause, my breath forming clouds in the cold night air. All of it. Why they want me. What Ryan discovered. Why you came. Alexander's eyes met mine, measuring, assessing. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he nodded once. Your mother wasn't just an Omega, he said. She was the last known lunar seer. The words hit me like a physical blow. Lunar seers, wolves with the ability to read the moon's secrets, to divine true futures, to sense ripples in time itself. They were legends, myths from the old tales my mother used to whisper to me at bedtime. That's impossible, I whispered. She was just an Omega? Alexander raised an eyebrow. Like you're just an Omega? I touched my pendant, the familiar contours suddenly strange under my fingertips. She never told me. She was protecting you. Alexander started walking again, though slower now. Lunar seers were hunted to near extinction during the Great Purge. Most people believe they died out completely. The Great Purge, I echoed. History lessons from Pack School surfaced in my memory. 300 years ago, when humans discovered our existence and tried to eradicate us. That's the sanitized version told to pups, Alexander said. The truth is darker. It wasn't just humans hunting us, it was our own kind, turning on those with special abilities out of fear and greed, lunar seers most of all. We reached a small clearing where a stream cut through the forest. Alexander paused to let me drink. The water was ice cold, numbing my lips but reviving my flagging energy. Why hunt seers? I asked after slaking my thirst. Because they could reveal uncomfortable truths. Because their prophecies sometimes led to changes in power. Because their blood, freely given at the right lunar phase, could bestow temporary heightened abilities. His expression darkened. And because with the right ritual, killing a seer during a lunar eclipse could transfer their power to the killer. Horror crept up my spine. And you think I inherited this ability? I know you did. Alexander's eyes held mine with unsettling intensity. Your eyes, the violet blue that appears in no natural wolf, the mark of a lunar seer. I shook my head, denial rising instinctively. But I can't see the future. I can only sense emotions, detect lies. Your abilities are dormant, untrained. Alexander started walking again, helping me across the stream by placing stepping stones where the water ran too deep. Your mother bound them for your protection when you were an infant. The pendant is part of that binding. My hand flew to the wooden carving at my throat. How do you know all this? Alexander was silent for several steps, as if debating how much to reveal. Because my grandmother was a lunar seer, he finally said. The last one to serve openly as advisor to the Northern Territories. She was killed during the final wave of purges, when my father was just a boy. Understanding dawned. That's why you recognize the symbols on the USB drive, the triad emblem, the alliance between wolves, witches, and seers, he confirmed. Before the great division that scattered supernatural beings into isolated factions, my father spent his life searching for surviving seer bloodlines, hoping to reunite the triad. When he died, I continued his work. And you found my mother, I said softly. Too late. Regret shadowed his features. By the time I traced her lineage, she was already dead. But she left behind a daughter, me. The revelation was too enormous to process fully. My entire identity, the foundation of my understanding of myself, was shifting beneath my feet. Ryan knew, I realized. That's what he discovered in the archives. Your cousin was cleverer than I gave him credit for. Alexander acknowledged. He found references to your mother's bloodline, made the connection to the lunar seers. He contacted me, but wanted proof before telling you, and now he's gone. My voice broke on the last word, grief finally piercing through the shock. Alexander stopped walking, turning to face me fully. I will find him, Grace, dead or alive. I will bring him home to you. The promise hung in the night air between us, weighted with an intensity that stole my breath. For the first time, I fully looked at the man before me, not just the Alpha King, the legend, the political force, but the man. His face was sharp angles and shadows in the moonlight, his eyes reflecting starlight with an almost supernatural clarity. Power radiated from him, yet there was something else there too. Something that resonated with the broken, hidden parts of myself. Why do you care? I asked, the question that had circled in my mind since he first appeared at the Howling ceremony. About me? About any of this? His expression softened almost imperceptibly, because the first vision my grandmother ever recorded was of a woman with stars in her eyes who would either save our kind or destroy us. A woman who would stand at a crossroads during the blood moon and choose. The blood moon, I echoed. The lunar eclipse next month, he nodded, watching my face carefully. The first total lunar eclipse to fall on the winter solstice in 3 centuries. The significance wasn't lost on me, even with my limited knowledge of wolf mysticism. Power moments, convergences of cosmic forces. These were the times when magic was strongest, when boundaries between worlds thinned, when transformation was possible. You think I'm this woman from the prophecy. It wasn't a question. I know you are. His certainty was unshakable, as do the people hunting you. Fear and something else, something warmer, deeper, coiled in my chest. And if I don't want this destiny, if I just want to be normal, to be left alone, then I would help you disappear, he said, surprising me. Give you a new identity, a new life far from wolf territories. But you don't think that's what I really want, I finished for him. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I think you've spent your life being told you're less, when every instinct has whispered that you're more. I think you've hungered for purpose, for belonging, for the truth of who you are. The accuracy of his assessment left me speechless. How could this man I'd just met understand what I'd never articulated even to myself? And what if I am this woman? I asked softly. What if I stand at this crossroads? What choice am I supposed to make? That, he said, is what we need to find out. We resumed walking, though the atmosphere between us had shifted, charged with new awareness. After another half hour, the trees thinned, revealing a small cabin nestled against the base of a cliff. Smoke curled from its chimney, and warm light glowed from behind closed curtains. Alexander tensed beside me, pulling me behind him as he scanned the clearing. Something's wrong, he murmured. There should be guards. I stretched my senses outward, trying to feel any presences within the cabin or hiding in the surrounding trees. Nothing malevolent registered, but something else did. A familiar emotional signature that made my heart stutter. Ryan, I breathed, breaking free from Alexander's grasp and running toward the cabin. Grace, wait, he called. But I was already halfway across the clearing, driven by desperate hope. I burst through the door without knocking, nearly collapsing with relief at the sight before me. Ryan sat at a rustic wooden table, pale and bandaged, but alive. His haggard face broke into a smile when he saw me. Gracie, he said, opening his arms. I flew into them, inhaling his familiar cedar and leather scent, tears streaming down my face. You're alive, I sobbed against his shoulder. I know. He stroked my hair as he had when I was a child. I'm sorry, I couldn't risk contacting you directly. They were watching. Alexander appeared in the doorway, his posture relaxing slightly at the scene before him. Morris, he acknowledged with a nod. You look terrible. Your Majesty. Ryan inclined his head respectfully. Thank you for bringing her safely. It was a near thing, Alexander replied, stepping inside and closing the door. The pack house is lost. Sea wolves, with Victor's help. Ryan's arm tightened around me. Casualties? Unknown. My guards are gathering survivors. I pulled back to look at my cousin's face. noting the new lines of strain around his eyes, the pallor beneath his tan. "What happened to you? Where have you been?" Ryan exchanged a look with Alexander. "Checking the final piece of the puzzle," he said, and nearly dying for it. He reached inside his shirt, wincing with the movement, and withdrew an object that made my breath catch. A crystal pendant identical to mine, but fashioned from clear quartz rather than wood. "Your mother made two," he explained, holding it up so the firelight caught its facets. "One to bind your abilities, one to unlock them when the time was right." I stared at the pendant, mesmerized by the way it seemed to capture and amplify the light. "And the time is right now? The blood moon approaches," Ryan said gravely, "and the Triad Council has reformed in secret, preparing for your emergence." "Triad Council? But you said the alliance was broken centuries ago," I said, looking to Alexander for confirmation. "The official alliance, yes," the Alpha King acknowledged. "But there have always been those working to preserve the old knowledge, the old connections, waiting for the right moment to restore balance." Ryan nodded. "What I found in the archives was evidence that Mom was working with them before her death. She knew what you would become, Gracie. She was preparing the way. The weight of legacy pressed down on me. Generations of secret knowledge and hidden purpose culminating in my existence. It was too much. Too fast. "I need air," I said abruptly, pulling away from both men and their expectant gazes. Neither tried to stop me as I stepped onto the cabin's small porch. The night had deepened, stars burning cold and bright overhead, the waxing moon sailing through wisps of cloud. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to find solid ground in a world that kept shifting beneath my feet. Behind me, I could hear Ryan and Alexander talking in low voices, discussing strategies, contingencies, plans in which I was clearly the central piece. All my life I'd been overlooked, dismissed, pushed to the margins. Now suddenly I was essential, desired, hunted. The door opened, and Alexander joined me on the porch. He didn't speak, simply stood beside me, offering silent companionship as I stared at the night sky. "All my life," I finally said, "I've felt like I was waiting for something, like the person I appeared to be wasn't the person I was meant to be." I turned to face him. "But I never imagined this. Few of us become who we imagined," he said quietly, "but some of us become who we were always meant to be, if we have the courage to embrace it. Even if it means danger? Even if it means others might die because of me?" Alexander stepped closer. "People are already dying, Grace. The supernatural world is fracturing. Old hatreds are resurfacing. The balance that once existed between wolves, witches, seers, and others has been destroyed. Without restoration, war is inevitable. And I'm supposed to prevent that?" I shook my head in disbelief. "I can barely prevent getting beaten at pack gatherings." "You are stronger than you know," he said, his voice dropping to a register that resonated deep within me. "I saw it the moment I laid eyes on you. Kneeling in that clearing. The others thought you were submitting. I saw you enduring, surviving, waiting." His perception stole my breath. No one had ever seen me so clearly. "What if I fail?" I whispered. Alexander reached out, his fingertips just barely brushing my cheek in a touch so gentle it made my heart ache. "Then we fail together." The moment hung suspended between us, charged with unspoken possibilities. His eyes held mine, ice blue, and yet somehow warmer than any gaze that had ever been turned on me. I found myself leaning toward him, drawn by a pull that felt ancient, inevitable. The cabin door opened, shattering the moment. "We have a problem," Ryan announced, his face grim. "Victor just sent a message. He has hostages from the pack. He's demanding we turn Grace over by dawn, or he starts killing them one by one." The fragile bubble of connection popped. Reality rushed back in. Harsh, dangerous, demanding. "How many hostages?" Alexander asked, all softness vanishing from his demeanor. 6, including Ellie and her mother. Ryan's eyes met mine apologetically. "I'm sorry, Gracie. I know you care for them." The news hit like a physical blow. Ellie, who had saved me at the pack house, who I'd thought was dead. Her mother, who had snuck me extra food when others weren't looking. The few people who had shown me kindness, now in danger because of me. "Where?" Alexander demanded. "The old mining complex at Briar Ridge, 10 miles south of here. Alexander's expression hardened into something terrible and beautiful. Then we have our answer. We go to Briar Ridge. He turned to me, his eyes burning with cold fire, but not to surrender you, to end this. The certainty in his voice should have reassured me. Instead, dread pooled in my stomach as I remembered the prophecy. A woman standing at a crossroads. A choice that would save or destroy. Dawn was coming, and with it, my moment of decision. The pre-dawn air hung heavy with fog as we approached the abandoned mining complex at Briar Ridge. Rust-colored buildings loomed like ancient monoliths against the lightening sky, their broken windows staring out like hollow eyes. The place had been deserted for decades after a collapse claimed 12 lives, a tragedy that left the site with a reputation for being haunted. Now it would witness more bloodshed. Alexander, Ryan, and I crouched behind an outcropping of rocks, overlooking the main yard. 4 of Alexander's elite guards had joined us, materializing silently from the forest, an hour after Ryan received Victor's message. They moved with the fluid grace of born predators, their loyalty to their alpha evident in every deferential glance. 6 hostages confirmed, reported Kira, the only female among the guards. Her dark eyes missed nothing as she scanned the complex through binoculars. Being held in the old foreman's office, 2nd floor, Eastern Building, and Victor? Alexander's voice was cold, controlled. Inside with them, Tessa and 3 others as guards. The sea wolves are positioned throughout the complex, at least 15 that I could spot. I shivered, not entirely from the cold. How do we get them out? We don't, Alexander said bluntly. You stay here with 2 of my guards, while the rest of us create a diversion. Once the hostages are secure, we retreat. No. The word came out more forcefully than I'd intended. Both men turned to look at me in surprise. This ends now. No more running, no more hiding. I'm tired of others suffering because of me. Ryan placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. Gracie, you can't risk yourself. You're too important. Important for what? I challenged. A prophecy? A maybe future? Those are real people in there. People who showed me kindness when no one else would. I turned to Alexander. You said I have a choice to make. I'm making it now. Something shifted in Alexander's expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition. What do you propose? I touched the wooden pendant at my throat, then looked at the crystal one Ryan had given me, now hanging beside it. I need to know what I really am, what I can do. My eyes met his. I need to unbind my abilities. Ryan sucked in a sharp breath. Gracie, no, without training, without preparation. There's no time, I insisted. The blood moon is weeks away, but those people will be dead within hours if we don't act. Alexander studied me, his gaze so intense I could almost feel it as a physical touch. You understand what you're risking? Unbound abilities can be overwhelming, especially for someone who's never used them. I straightened my spine. I understand. A moment of silence stretched between us. The weight of decision heavy in the air. How would we do it? Alexander finally asked, ignoring Ryan's sound of protest. I looked to the eastern horizon, where the first hint of dawn was bleeding into the night sky. My mother bound my abilities with moonlight. With the rising sun, with both pendants united, I think that's the counterbalance. It was instinct speaking, knowledge I shouldn't have had bubbling up from some deep genetic memory. Alexander nodded as if my words confirmed something he already knew. The first ray of dawn, he said. That's your moment. Ryan moved between us, his face taut with concern. This is too dangerous. If something goes wrong, then I fail, I said simply. But at least I tried. At least I chose. I took his hand, squeezing it gently. You protected me my whole life, Ryan. Let me protect others now. Something in my words reached him. Pain and pride warred in his expression before he finally nodded. Just like your mother, he murmured. She would be proud. The sky lightened further, pink and gold bleeding across the horizon. Time was short. We'll need to get closer to the Eastern Building, Alexander decided, accepting my choice. Create a direct line of sight to the hostages while remaining concealed. He turned to his guards. Kira, Dominic, with us. Marco and Levi, secure our retreat path. The guards nodded, accepting their orders without question. Alexander turned back to me. Once your abilities manifest, if they manifest, what then? I swallowed hard. I don't know, but I think I'll know when it happens. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all we had. We moved silently through the complex, using abandoned equipment and crumbling walls as cover. The first hint of sunlight gilded the mountains to the east as we positioned ourselves in a collapsed section of the main building, directly opposite the foreman's office where the hostages were held. Through a broken window, I could see them. Ellie and her mother, 4 other pack members, all bound and sitting against a wall. Victor paced before them, checking his watch repeatedly. Tessa stood by the door, her beautiful face twisted with disdain as she looked down at the hostages. Sun's coming, Ryan whispered, nodding toward the horizon where the first sliver of golden light was appearing. I removed both pendants, holding them in my palm, the wooden wolf with stars for eyes that had protected me all my life, and the crystal twin that would release what had been bound. They seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat, warm against my skin. What do I do? I asked, my voice barely audible. Trust yourself, Alexander said, his eyes never leaving my face. Trust your blood. The first ray of sunrise broke over the distant mountains, shooting a beam of golden light through the mist. Instinctively, I raised my hands, letting the light touch both pendants. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, like ice cracking on a frozen lake, I felt something shift inside me. A barrier breaking, a door opening to a room I hadn't known existed. The pendants in my palm began to glow. First the crystal, then the wooden one catching its light and amplifying it. Heat flooded through me, radiating from my chest outward. I gasped, dropping to my knees as sensations overwhelmed me. Not just emotions now, but thoughts, intentions, the very essence of the people around me pouring into my consciousness. Alexander's fierce protectiveness, Ryan's fearful love, the guards' wary respect, and beyond them, the hostages' terror, Victor's desperate ambition, Tessa's bitter jealousy. Grace? Alexander's voice seemed to come from very far away. I couldn't answer. The world had transformed around me. The air itself seemed alive with currents of intention and possibility, timelines branching and converging like rivers of light. I could see them all. What might happen? What could happen? What would happen if certain choices were made? And there, shining brighter than the others, a single path forward. I know what to do, I whispered, my voice strange to my own ears. Help me stand. Alexander's strong hands lifted me, steadying me when my legs threatened to buckle. The pendants had melded together in my palm. Neither wood nor crystal now, but something new. A silvery disc etched with the triad symbol. I need to be seen, I said, the knowledge coming from somewhere beyond conscious thought. By all of them. Understanding dawned in Alexander's eyes. Without hesitation, he lifted me into his arms and carried me out of our hiding place, into the open yard between buildings. Ryan and the guards followed, weapons ready but not attacking. Victor! Alexander roared, his voice echoing across the complex. Face us! Figures appeared at windows and doorways, Victor and Tessa at the foreman's office, sea wolves from their various positions. Shock registered on their faces at our bold appearance. Victor recovered first. So you came after all, he called down, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. But this changes nothing. Surrender the Omega, or the hostages die. Look at her, Victor, Alexander replied, setting me gently on my feet, but keeping one hand at my back for support. Really look. Do you still think she's just an Omega? I stood straight, the rising sun at my back casting my shadow long across the yard. The pendant in my hand pulsed with light, and I felt something changing in my eyes. Heat, pressure, a glow I could sense rather than see. Victor faltered, uncertainty crossing his face for the first time. What trick is this? No trick, I called up to him, my voice carrying with new authority. Only truth. I am the last lunar seer, and I have seen your path, Victor. I have seen all paths. I raised the transformed pendant, and its light intensified, shooting out in a beam that illuminated Victor where he stood. In that light, I could see everything. His fears, his plans, the darkness in his heart. "You sold your pack to the sea wolves," I continued, the words flowing through me like water, "in exchange for power, for territory. But they lied to you. They never intended to honor their agreement. Once I was captured, once my blood was taken, you would be disposed of like all the others they've used." Uncertainty turned to alarm on Victor's face. Behind him, one of the sea wolves moved subtly, hand shifting toward a weapon. "They're using you," I pressed, taking a step forward. The pendant's light grew, spreading to encompass Tessa, the other betrayers. "Just as they used the witch covens in the south, just as they planned to use my blood to break the old boundaries between territories." Murmurs spread among the sea wolves. I could feel their resolve wavering, confusion spreading as hidden truths came to light. "She's lying," Tessa cried, but doubt had already taken root. I took another step forward, power humming through my veins. "I offer one chance. Release the hostages, leave this territory, and your futures remain your own to shape. Stay, and I will show each of you the consequences of your choices, every moment of suffering, every death that results from your actions today." It wasn't a threat, but a promise. The seer's gift and burden, to reveal truth in all its terrible clarity. I opened myself fully to the power flowing through me, letting it radiate outward. The pendant's light expanded, touching each person in the complex, creating a web of illumination that connected us all. In that moment of connection, of perfect clarity, I showed them, not with words, but with visions, the future that awaited if they continued this path. The supernatural world tearing itself apart, ancient balances destroyed, chaos consuming all. One by one, the sea wolves lowered their weapons. Victor's face had gone ashen. Tessa was weeping silently. The light receded, drawing back into the pendant, leaving the truth exposed in the harsh morning sunlight. Alexander stepped to my side, his presence solid and reassuring. "The hostages," he commanded. "Now." Victor nodded jerkily, backing away from the window. Minutes later, the captives emerged from the building, rushing toward us as their captors retreated. Ellie threw her arms around me, her face wet with tears. "I knew it," she whispered. "I always knew you were more." As the sun climbed higher, the sea wolves and the traitors departed. Not in defeat, but in a daze of revelation. The battle had been won without bloodshed, with truth rather than violence. I turned to Alexander, suddenly exhausted as the power ebbed. "Is it over?" He caught me as my knees buckled, lifting me effortlessly into his arms. His eyes, those ice-blue eyes that had first locked with mine in the forest clearing, held warmth now, and something deeper that made my heart flutter despite my exhaustion. "No," he said softly. "It's just beginning."